Four crazy guys with wives.
We love beer.
Want to kill it in business.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Entrepreneurial Family Man podcast. Sometimes we have no idea what to do with our kids. But we are killing it right now. So we are just four guys who are crazy about our wives. We love our kids, and we want to kill it in business.
Yes.
Is that good, Jamie?
Sure, it's good.
Nailed it.
Part 2 in our series with Dan Miller. And this is a special one because it really gets into our hearts and our heads about why we do what we do. This is a particularly fun episode to take questions from his listeners who are on this entrepreneurial journey themselves. And we address some very common questions about making that jump into entrepreneurship, protecting your marriage, your family, to really make that the most important piece of your life. So this was just a fun episode.
It's a matter of people designing their lives, as you guys have really been talking so clearly about. I want to come back to some of the principles that you guys talk about on the Entrepreneurial Family Man. But Michael, I wanted to come back over to you. Again, you have 3 of the smallest children of anybody in your foursome. So there's special kind of opportunities and challenges that come with that. I know you work from home, and with that, you know, there are times when you have to have door closed to the patter of little feet. Tell us a little bit about that. Now, you transitioned from being in the construction business and got involved in this coaching thing, saw that there was a way to help other men walk through some things. I want to go more specifically in some of the things that you deal with, and I've got some notes on that. But this idea of working from home, making a space to work from home when you have really small children, what are some boundaries that you use, or how do you make that work well?
Yeah, this is not an easy thing. It really isn't. It's not for the faint of heart, because anyone that has little kids around knows how difficult it can be to be focused and get work done when there's kids anywhere in the vicinity, especially ones that know where you are and know how to call out your name through the wall. And so this has not been an easy thing for me, but like a lot of things in the family dynamic, it starts with initiating a conversation with for me, Lydia, my wife, Lydia. Like, we have to talk about what this is going to look like, so there isn't any confusion about the expectations on either side. I'm not going to get much work done if we don't have these conversations and put some very clear boundaries in place. So we very much work together on this. We'll even, on a Sunday, we'll sit down and I'll show her my schedule. I'll say, hey, I have these calls during these times, and I absolutely can't be bothered during this time period. This one is a little bit more flexible, so that one's okay. What do you have going on? What does your week look like? Let's combine those two things and talk through every detail of what we need to talk through, so when we get into this week, we both know what's going on and there isn't unmet expectations. So that's how we protect this time and set our boundaries, is by keeping that conversation going and having that every week. And Lydia, when she knows I have a really important set of calls, she's great. She's been so good to me. She'll take the kids out for a walk, or maybe she'll schedule something, an activity for the kids to do together to make that work. But if it is a little bit more flexible, there might be times when I jump out and make lunch for the kids or spend an hour with them for a period of time. And so it really is, it starts by having that communication flowing between Lydia and I.
Yeah. I've got a couple of things I want to ask about particular areas of expertise that you have, and then I want to go to listener questions. You don't have to be a dad if you're a mom, because the dynamics of making this work, you can see, have a lot of varied applications. Again, we're not looking for this is exactly the way to do it. We're talking about deciding first, what kind of life do you want to live? And then how do you make your life work? Michael, it seems like time has gone quickly. One of the cool things about even in the Eagles community here is even though we've only had this community for a short period of time, we've got relationships that came together in this community that go back way farther than that. I remember when you came to Coaching with Excellence, one of our events here, and it was in the state, you actually brought Lydia here. Her being from Texas, you being from New York, met here before you were married. We got the inside scoop on the unique, innovative proposal that you did. You guys got married, and wow, here it is. You have 3 children. You've changed your career focus totally, and here you are. Now, that being said, one of the issues that you dealt with personally was walking through fear. And I hear you talk about that a lot. It's one of your unique advantages as a coach in helping other people, especially men walk through fear. 2 questions. How have you dealt with fear? And is the fear all gone now?
Yeah, how have I dealt with fear? I mean, it was such a controlling force in my life. And I just have to mention, Dan, this whole thing is your fault that I'm a coach and that I'm living this free and flexible life now, because when I had my construction business and I was working outside, guess what was on the radio? The 48 Days podcast at the time. Now it's an online radio show, but that planted a seed in me that I could not run from. And then I went on to get training at Coaching Mastery Program, and it's been such a launch for me, and I'm so grateful for that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Let me take a step back there. Yeah, so I struggled horribly with fear and anxiety for a period of, probably 15 years. And so I think walking through that and really feeling how debilitating that can be and how controlling that can be, it developed a sense of compassion in me for some other people that were caught in that same thing, that anxiety and that fear. And I found that I could speak to that from a place of understanding, and it really helped me develop that trust and help them step out of that as well. But the question was, how did I deal with fear? I didn't. I was overcome by it. I had nothing left to fight in me. And so I gave up, basically, is what that looked like. And when I gave up and when I felt like I couldn't fight it anymore, what I discovered was that it didn't kill me. I was still standing. I was still there. Like, so maybe this whole thing is in my mind, and maybe this is something that can be overcome. Now, do I deal with fear now? Absolutely. I mean, it'd have to be a statue not to deal with some sort of fear, but in no way does it control me or stop me from doing what I know I'm called to do. I hope that answers your question.
It does. I was confident you were going to get to that point. Fear doesn't go away. Whether it's connected with our business, stepping out, doing something less structured, more entrepreneurial, like you and the other guys have done, it doesn't go away. But we learn how to kind of, I heard Brene Brown talk about, we don't want fear to drive our car, but it's okay if it's in the back seat. It keeps us on our toes and still helps us empathize with others who are experiencing that as well. All right.
Yeah. Now, Dan, can I speak to that a little bit more?
Sure.
This morning, I was afraid. I had started a new engagement with a client, a huge client with a ton of potential, executive level coaching, something that I don't have as much experience with. And I was frightened. And you know what? In the back of my mind, I cracked this little bit of a smile, because I know that I'm being stretched and I'm growing and I'm going to a place that I've never been before. And I know on the other side of that, what that looks like is I'm going to build some confidence through that, even if it doesn't go perfectly. And I'm going to learn through this, and I'm going to expand what I'm willing to face next time. So if you're afraid right now, that's a good thing. It can be okay. Like, grin right back at that and take a step into it.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. If we're totally comfortable, we're probably not growing. We're probably not going to change the results we have now. if we want change and growth, new opportunities, it's just inevitable that fear, uncertainty is going to be part of that. So if they're there, yeah, it's an indicator we're probably on the path to something new.
We say so frequently, but it always needs to be repeated in a conversation like this. The alternative in responding to the fear and letting it shut us down is that you're giving up something, you're losing. And if we can get to that place of remembering, oh, wait a minute, am I more afraid of losing this opportunity, this doorway that could be opened there? Sometimes you can simply still operate in a fear motivator, because we are pain-driven, passion-driven kinds of human beings, but examine the whole trade we're making anytime we're tempted to give into something that's big and scary, and we back off. Wait, this is not a zero-sum issue here. You're losing something else. Are you afraid of losing that? If so, maybe you can twist that into being some motivation.
Yeah.
I'm much more afraid of missing opportunities than I am of falling flat on my face and screwing something up. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
But I also laugh a few once in a while, you know?
Yeah. Fear's good. It's like the life of an entrepreneur. I mean, we know that it comes with equal portions of exhilaration and terror. And those can be very close in time. It can be a 10-second switch from one to the other. Well, now you guys have some big plans for Entrepreneurial Family Man. I mean, you guys came together. The podcast was kind of a focal point for this that you're doing, but you've got some other kind of outgrowth, some other vision for what that would do in terms of you really helping. I mean, describe to us, what's the goal? What's the vision of Entrepreneurial Family Man?
Boy, Dan, and this actually gets back to some couple of great hours of coaching on a rooftop in Cuba with
Yes.
you coaching us and the other entrepreneurs that were there as we're taking in the sounds and enjoying a cigar and just really thinking through. There are 4 distinct entrepreneurs here. We all have our own businesses that we're running. That will continue, but there's something here. There's a movement happening where people are not out there talking about doing really well in business and your marriage and your family. It's the Grant Cardone's 10x your business, and they don't talk about any of the other stuff. Or it's maybe on the other side, it's only in the marriage piece. And that's fine. But there are so many entrepreneurs out there that want to have it all. And that message seems to be resonating. And so like our mastermind as an example, that happened because there were some guys that just started saying, boy, is there any other way to engage with you besides just listening to you on a podcast?
Sure.
And so that was an example. And now we're walking through these ideas of what would it look like to gather guys and retreat together and have a 2-3 day event to talk through each of these pieces and be more strategic and dive deeper with them in building a life that they want to live, that they want to live out with their wife, be very intentional with their kids, and grow a business in a way that can make that all work. And so we're talking about events. In this space, Brian, you're a master course creator. We're talking about some courses about just leading guys along to how can you really the what and the how of how to do this kind of a lifestyle. So those are some things we've talked through.
It's an interesting dynamic here because all 4 of us have separate businesses that are our main businesses.
Yep.
So in one sense, in order to maintain our values and live them out responsibly, there's a limit to what we can do between those 2 domains, our own businesses and families and this EFM thing. And so we are all in for the long haul. We see this as a long game. And Dan, you've played a huge part in that as you listened to us and coached us through it. You said this is a long game. Building a brand with a message like this takes time to build trust. So that's the way we see it. We're going to continue to move forward and take steps to do cool things like this event coming up. But we see this as, what is this going to look like in the next 5 years, the next 10 years? So we're all in on a long view for this brand.
Awesome. Well, here's the kind of thing that you deal with. Got a question here from Glenn. How do you help your wife to deal with fear? Glenn says, not only do I deal with it, but my wife is terrified of change. I feel like she needs all the answers, but I have none. I feel like I'm jumping off a cliff and asking my wife to go along.
Glenn, good for you for being that transparent with everybody here, and good for you for recognizing that you don't want to move forward unless the two of you can move in tandem. One of the worst things that can happen is that we catch our passion. We begin to pursue it by operationalizing and saying, I'm going to go for it. And we look over our metaphorical shoulder and our spouse isn't there with us or is even tugging back at us. And we wind up splitting the most important part. Remember, when we stand at the altar, those two become one. And that relationship has to be paramount. So there's nothing that will substitute for a tremendous amount of conversation. I mean, that's really where you have to start and camp out. We were discussing today in our mastermind group that, Rachel, I've been married 32 years. Very rarely has there been a week gone by that we didn't have a date. And people go, what? Really? Well, yeah, very rarely has there been a Sunday that we didn't go to church. Sometimes it happens, but not very often. So dating my wife without the kids, in addition to what we do as family, has been such a huge piece of our vision for making our marriage. Now, I don't come by that just by guessing at it either, by the way. My folks live here on the farm, and we have this very close-knit family because of the modeling that I was blessed to see in my own family of orientation growing up. But placing that much emphasis on just the two of you together, we have various restaurants we go to, but we love the fact that they're a long drive because there's nothing like that windshield time. When you're on your time, just the two of you, and you're running through the list of what's going on with the kids and what'd you find out at the doctor and gosh, did you see that bill come up? But by the time you get to the restaurant, you're at least aware, though there may be tensions, we're a team. I'm not alone in facing whatever these stresses and challenges and questions are. We're a team, and if you will make that the way you do life, you will probably gain the value of some of your wife's, we'll call them fears or cautions, that might help you not get too far out on a skinny branch that'll snap on you. And she will surely also grow in some of her greater comfort with the risk-taking that's inherent in entrepreneurism. Again, the main message, nothing's going to make up for tremendous amounts of time, not concentrated, like we're going to get away for a full week and just do a deep, no, that might be needed, but no, over the lifespan, this is how we do life. These two are one, and we do a lot of time kneecap to kneecap, face to face, breaking bread, talking out, everything. Hey, Jamers.
There are a lot of ancillary issues that you just touched on, Chris. And I know it's the kind of thing that you guys deal with in more depth in your Entrepreneurial Family Man podcast. But, if there is, one of the things that I've found is that a little success goes a long way to allaying fears that a spouse may have. When it's just, hey, we're going to risk the farm, on this new idea that I have, I hope it works, that can be very intimidating. But just a little bit, that's why we often recommend that 15 hours a week for people on the side. Do that, prove some success in that. If it's a financial issue, get to the place where you're generating 50% of your current income. That goes a long ways into alleviating a spouse's fear about the uncertainty. So stair step, as you can do in most of the kinds of ideas that we talk about in this community. Yep. Jamie Slingerland, welcome in, my friend. We've been talking about you behind your back, but glad to have you join us here for the last few minutes.
Thank you. My ear was ringing really loud, so I knew.
There you go. Hey, we covered your cruise, our trip that we did to Cuba, and lots of these things. These three guys have really added a ton of value here. So welcome in. I want to address some of the questions that are coming in here. Jordan says, what if you feel like your finances aren't in the right place to make these changes? How can you get the momentum to move forward on this to help everyone in the family see the long-term vision? Kind of parlays on what I was just talking about there. At what point can you rationalize, justify moving into a more creative lifestyle if you're used to having a job with predictable income? Jamie, you've been through that. You went from being an employee to doing your own thing. So tell our listeners a little bit about that transition time.
I missed out a little bit on what McCluskey was talking about, but I did catch part of his spirit, which was getting on the same page with your wife and spending that time. And that was definitely what happened with me and Ruthie. As a man, I had made a lot of mistakes and I took responsibility for my life. And I had a lot of those conversations with Ruthie explaining the vision of what we wanted. We had $90,000 of consumer debt that we had to pay off. And we took on all sorts of side hustle jobs and part-time work and just went crazy. In 30 months, we knocked it out. A lot of those really difficult times have made us the entrepreneurs that we are today. The ability to have that conversation when things get difficult and create a plan. And again, there is a little bit about commiserating with each other and really processing that through, but to really get on the same page and then create a vision together so that it's not just a guy coming to his wife and saying, hey, honey, this is what we're going to do. Like, stand in line. It's more like, hey, like, what do we want for our life and what do we need to do? I love the question you always ask, Dan, like, who do we need to become? It's a little bit shameful to say because it still stings some of the pain, but I feel like a boy became a man in that process because we rolled up our sleeves and just took complete responsibility for all the mistakes.
In doing that, then, and not recognizing you had $90,000 in consumer debt and you wanted to get out of that, but you really wanted to move into a more creative lifestyle with more financial opportunity. How long did you keep your regular job before you switched?
I got rid of my regular job and it just became so ridiculous because I was making so much more in my part-time than I was in my career.
Awesome.
And I remember sending you emails, Dan. You were such a mentor to me. I was sitting there as an extrovert up in my attic in Buffalo, New York. All the free time that I had sending out boxes. I had dwarfed my income as a school teacher of making $33,450. And the first year I launched in the Amazon business, we made about close to $70,000. The big problem, though, Dan, is that I was moving from a place of speaking in front of a whole bunch of kids and being in my sweet spot to going up to the third floor in the attic and just opening up boxes all day long listening to podcasts. So I had to work through this whole thing of like moving out of something that felt authentic, yet I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I just fast forward 5 years later, I'm doing the podcast with these awesome guys and we have a platform to speak, and God has really changed a lot of things. So I'm super grateful. I'm slowly sort of moving into more of a sweet spot of what I'm called to do.
Oh my, that's a really significant kind of insight that you just dropped in there. We've got 5 years now perspective from recognizing you want to make that change and really starting to make the change. Not only did you guys get out of debt and move into a more creative lifestyle, but then you also decided you wanted to move as a family, which you had the freedom to do. Now, and I want to just jump on a couple things that you guys do so excellently. You have a beautiful house right here in Franklin, Tennessee, but you travel a lot. Tell us how that's part of a business decision and why you guys have such freedom to go to Italy and to Mexico and the places that you've been just in the last few months.
Yeah. First, before I get into that, I just want to say something really quick. I don't know if McGreevy shared this, but like, you were such a catalyst in that whole situation. Me and McGreevy did a road trip from Buffalo, New York, where we sat in the front row. We made friends with Nick Pavlidis. He was right there in the front seat, and we've been besties ever since, me, Michael, and Pavlidis. We actually stopped in Ohio and blew off fireworks in a parking lot on the way to your event. We were like so pumped up about everything that we were doing. And so, I mean, that's pretty funny, but that's just who me and McGreevy are. We're crazy like that. As far as having the ability to travel, that we've positioned our business where we're doing a lot more fulfillment by Amazon and doing coaching over the phone, telephonic. Me and Ruthie do all our coaching through the telephone. It's never Zoom. It just creates so much freedom. Last year when we were in Mexico, it was the first time we went to this place called San Miguel de Allende. I had my first $1,000 a month coaching client, and I was on the rooftop overlooking this amazing view on a lawn chair with my earbud in there, just coaching my client. And I never thought that would have been possible 5 years earlier. Well, me and McGreevy were blowing up fireworks on the way to your place, but
Jamie, talk about though what you and Ruthie do with your place and Verbo and the building that you're doing now.
Dan knows all the Williamson County stuff, so I don't know if the Williamson County commissioner people are listening right now. So I got to give
this is live on Facebook. Be careful.
Yeah. So we put our house up on VRBO. I don't know if McCluskey always says Verbo. I don't know what the right way. HomeAway now, so we don't have to have that argument. But we got close to $500 a night for renting our house. And what we would do is just displace ourselves. So last year, we're doing less and less because now we're building like an Airbnb, like a standalone unit at our house. Last year, we had this request in May for 6 days, and we didn't want to go anywhere, but we had, just like Niemeyer and McGreevy's do this, Bob Goff has the 10-year adventure with your kids. So me and Ruthie had this spot where we were going to get like close to $3,000 for our house for like almost a week. And we were like, we don't even want to go anywhere because we love our house. And then Ruthie was like, well, what if we take Cecilia to Paris, or you take Cecilia to Paris? We ended up both of us going, me and Ruthie, because that's what Cecilia wanted. Usually with the 10-year adventure, it's only the dad, but Cecilia really wanted her to come. So we took the mom along. We dropped the kids off in Buffalo at my parents' house, and then me and Ruthie and Cecilia, my dad dropped us off at Toronto Airport, and we had a direct flight to Paris. But our Airbnb, all the awesome bread and desserts and glasses of wine that me and Ruthie had, airfare, everything in Paris was covered because some family got to stay in our house. And then icing on the cake, right? We come home. They left like a really nice bottle of wine for us with a handwritten note and just said, thank you so much for opening up your house. And their daughter was getting married here. And they got to experience our yard. We had horses in the back of our yard at that time. It was such a win-win-win. Crazy how many people won in that circumstance.
That's another great example about being creative in the kind of things you do. So opening your house up, getting approved with the regulations to have it be VRBO listed. And then the income allows you guys to have these unique travel adventures as a family. Yeah, it's a great piece of the kind of life you guys are living. Well, hey, we're wrapping up here. This has been awesome having you guys on. Love sharing your story. Love what you're doing. Love the fact that you all are active members and mentors in the 40 Days Eagles community. We value your input and commend you on what you're doing. Brian, you have anything to add?
My only question is, what would you say to the people watching that want to start their own thing together? Because you guys have gotten together. So maybe one piece of advice of like, how could we do this for ourselves?
I'll speak to that because it would be date. Same way as you got into marriage, get to know each other, because meetups and mashups like this, where we have our 4 different things going on and all, can work. But they come down to more than just a great idea or an opportunity. It comes down to a meshing of personalities and of minds and mindsets and all. So date the person, so to speak. Get to know each other over a prolonged period of time. Forming a partnership's a big deal. Breaking it apart hurts really badly. So, yeah. All
right. Well, God, we value the wisdom you guys bring. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and transparent sharing here. The easiest way to connect is to find you on the podcast, Entrepreneurial Family Man. Is that correct? All right.
Yep. And EFMlife.com. You can find us there and reach out to our Facebook community as well. EFMlife.com. All right. EFMlife.com. So thanks so much for sharing. Dan, if we have 1 minute, can I just answer this last question that someone posted a few minutes back from Jerry?
All right.
Just because I think it underscores so much of what we're about here at Entrepreneurial Family Man, and that's about our wives. And so he asked about, our business is busy and work, and how would you say your family, your wife and kids encourage or help you? One thing we talk about so much is that your spouse is your biggest stakeholder in your business. It's the most important stakeholder. And so to just routinely check in, and I feel compelled to share this story. I've actually never shared it with these guys because this just happened about a month ago, but I'm putting together a possible really huge merger. And I had to fly up to New York and have all these meetings back to back to back with all these important people. And, this company is doing billions and I'm just this little small fish. And I remember on the day 2 in the morning, we had a breakfast meeting with the CEO and the CFO, and we're just going back and forth. And there's a lot of stuff going on here with some big implications. And I had a horrible night's sleep the night before just thinking about stuff. And I have these meetings. I'm trying to sort through what this could happen, and then have a subsequent meeting with my travel agency manager that I brought up. I was just fried, and I needed perspective. And I went upstairs, back up to my hotel room, and I'm still in my suit and tie, and I plop on my bed, and I call my wife, and I just say, honey, I need your advice. I need your perspective on this. And literally was in tears with her. just saying, honey, I don't think I can do this. And Dan, you mentioned earlier that idea that, fear, uncertainty, and doubt is in the back seat of your car. It was climbing to the front seat at that moment. and I just needed to hear from her. And she just spoke the life that I needed at that point of saying, look where you've come. Look where you've come from. And,
wow.
And it was in that moment that I realized these guys on the screen make me better, because we talk about investing in your wife, investing in your family. That's what it's all about. And so anyway, Jerry, I don't know if that helps you at all, but I just felt like I had to share that story because it just so aptly hit what you were talking about.
Boy, what a rich resource and comfort to have a partner like that you call on. Thank you so much again, you guys, for contributing, and blessings to all of you as we continue figuring this out and making the world a better place.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, guys.
I fire myself sometimes.
Hey, it was a pretty cool interview, and I'll still say, what an incredible opportunity. Dan is so gracious, but to invite us in there and just lob us some big old fat softballs down the middle so that we could share the things that actually matter the most to us. I mean,
it is. And Dan has been such a part of each one of our stories, especially me. I mean, he's like the first podcaster that I start listening to when Jamie introduced me to. So to be on the same show as Dan discussing my journey is just such a blessing to look back on all that's happened since I met Dan Miller.
It's wild that he considers us mentors in his community, and that he called on us to share from our hearts to give value to those guys. Because I remember when I didn't feel like I had any value at all, except I was just looking up to Dan for his mentorship and his advice. And we've all come so far in our business.
Yeah, that was just fun perspective to share and to get to talk with him about. We know he's passionate about other people finding this kind of lifestyle. So we enjoyed it. Until we meet again, happy trail
to you. Until we meet. McCluskey, you were studying music in college. Let's hear the
yeah, that's why I'm not participating in this.
And he definitely was like, Niemeyer should not be singing. Until next time.
See you next week, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Entrepreneurial Family Man Podcast. Visit EFMLife.com to connect with us and others like you who are pursuing success in enterprise, family, and marriage.